Okay, that's clear. We're going to move on to the next set of anxiety disorders, which are phobias. Now, you've probably heard the term phobia before because it just means being afraid of something, right? And most of us have pretty healthy fears. We might fear snakes or cockroaches or being hit by a car. And these are normal fears. Now, when does it become a phobia? When the fear becomes so irrational and so intense that even thinking about or being reminded of or something that's similar to what we fear causes us to be in such a frightened state we can't function properly. Here, I'll tell you a story. Here's one called a woman named Marilyn, a 20-year-old homemaker, otherwise healthy and happy, but she is so afraid of thunderstorms that she feels anxious as soon as weather forecasters mention the possible storms later in the week. If her husband is away and a storm is forecast, she may stay with a close relative. During a storm, she hides from windows and buries her head deep in pillows and avoids seeing the lightning. Most of us are afraid of lightning. That's totally a sensible fear. But when you're so afraid that you have to hide, when you just even the mere mention of thunderstorms comes up, and you can't function, when there's actual thunderstorms, you just hide and you're in pillows and you cry and you weep, things like that, and that becomes an actual phobia. And so usually there's different names for different kinds of phobia. Psychologists have identified about like 700 or 800 different kinds of phobias, usually with Latin names. Here's a couple more common ones. The fear of socialphobia. This is the idea that when you're around other people, you're very afraid. Generally, people are anxious that they'll make a fool of themselves or humiliate themselves, or people will not approve of them for some reason. So people with socialphobia tend to stay away from other people, avoid social contact, and even just thinking about meeting other people would put them in a kind of a feared, anxious state. Another common one is agoraphobia. Agora is the Greek word for marketplace. Basically, it's a fear of being outdoors. So people with agoraphobia are afraid of stepping out, usually don't leave their house. They're open of wide open spaces. And the fear is that when they're outside, they're afraid that they'll be dizzy, fall over, and sometimes even like get pulled off from anti-gravitational pull. So something about being outdoors scares them. Compare that to claustrophobia, which is the fear of small places. There's certainly an unending series of interesting phobias that they've named, like triskaidekaphobia, which is the fear of the number 13 for people who are very superstitious, that when things come in number 13, they get really afraid. There's Panaphobia, people are just afraid of everything. Pan is in everything. There's phobophobia, people are afraid of fears. One that I learned recently is called Santa claustrophobia. That's a funny one. That's the fear of actually being stuck in a chimney. And so there's a lot of things to be afraid about, some of them more sensible than others. So let's see. This is the occurrence of people just afraid of these variety of items, like being alone, storms, water, closed spaces, so on and so forth. So it's pretty healthy. It seems like about 7% of people are afraid of being alone, but then when it's a really intense fear, then it becomes a phobia. You can see only a subset of all people who fear something have that phobia, usually much less than like a third to a half. So it seems like things that people most afraid of are animals. About 22% of people are afraid of some kind of animal. 20% of people are afraid of heights.